you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, awesome. Good evening, everybody. I'm the last speaker. I'm going to try to be brief. I was up since 4 this morning to get here, and many of you are probably pretty tired as well. So I want to share with you kind of the story of my life and how I came here today and how having Treacher Collins Syndrome has kind of inspired me to go about in the world and make positive change. So my name is Sam Drazin. I am 30 years old, and I live in Bradford, Vermont. I was born July 1st, 1987, with a mild case of Treacher Collins Syndrome. As a child, I was lucky to grow up in a small, affluent Vermont town situated next to the Connecticut River, just a few miles from Dartmouth College. When I reflect on my childhood, I don't think of it as being vastly different than my peers. Living in such a small town, everybody knows everybody, which in a way makes it easy to fit in. As I made my way through elementary and middle school, things started to change. I believe that all kids see differences, but it isn't until a certain age, usually middle school, that the differences they see in other human beings begins to change their reaction and behavior towards them. About midway through 8th grade, I noticed this to be true for my peers. My peer relationships began to change. Even as a young child, I'd always been interested in making money. Therefore, I began babysitting for many families in town. I found that I would go to school all day with limited social interactions with my peers, feeling invisible and ignored. But then after school, I would go and babysit for these families, and the kids were always very excited to see me. At that moment, I knew that in my professional life, I wanted to figure out a way to use my life experiences having Treacher Collins Syndrome to positively impact and empower younger people. I realized that although having Treacher Collins made certain things in my life at certain points in my life more challenging, it has also opened many new doorways for me. Middle school and high school continued to be a challenge for me. Living in a somewhat homogeneous community, if you didn't fit the norm, and I sure didn't, it wasn't always easy to feel truly accepted and a valued member of the community. From 8th to 10th grade, all I wanted to do was look like everybody else. It wasn't until I switched high schools my junior year that I realized that it wasn't as much about the way that I looked, but about the confidence I had in myself, which influenced the way others reacted towards me. Switching high schools was one of the best things I did. It gave me a brand new start, and I could be whoever I wanted to be. I quickly learned that it doesn't matter what you look like. What matters is what you can offer the world, and doing so in a confident manner. After feeling so ostracized by my peers for many years, being voted prom king in senior year was a moment that I will never forget and had a huge impact on my personal growth. Now, since I only have a little bit of time here, I'm going to kind of skip through the rest of high school and college and jump to post-college. So I got my degree in elementary education, and after college, I taught elementary school for 5 years, taught 5th grade as well as 3rd grade. As a teacher, I often wondered how students perceived the way that I looked. I have always found that being open and honest with kids is the best policy. I would tell my students about my Treacher Collins and my hearing aid within the first few days of school. I found that by explaining this to them right off, it helped to build a strong and trusting relationship with my students. I even had other teachers come up to me and tell me that outside on the playground, they would hear students in other classes ask my students, well, what's wrong with Mr. Drazin's ears? And my students would simply reply, well, that's just the way he was born. As a teacher looking and feeling a bit different, and a former elementary student looking and feeling a bit different, I often say that I've been on both sides of the desk. This, I believe, has given me a unique perspective of the social and emotional needs of all students, with and without any specific differences. And as a result, has allowed me to provide my students with a special experience to grow not only as academic learners, but as individuals as well. Everybody wants to feel valued, accepted, and a part of a community, whatever that community might be. So a few years back, so every year the state of Vermont chooses a book that's going to be the Vermont Reads book. So everybody in the state is supposed to read it. And a few years back, the book that was chosen, which is a book I'm sure many of us are familiar with, was Wonder by R.J. Palacio. So as the book spread in popularity, I began getting requests to go to schools, libraries, and other organizations to speak about craniofacial anomalies. The more that I presented about myself and my life with Treacher Collins Syndrome, the more confident and proud I became about myself and the unique experiences I have been fortunate to have because I was born with Treacher Collins. The more schools I visited and more students I spoke with, the more I realized that most people are more alike than different. As I would share about my reconstructive ear surgeries, jaw surgeries, bone conductive hearing aids, the students would want to share things that made them different with me as well, whether that was the fact that they had braces, Lyme disease, ADD, whatever it might be. From this, I realized the power of sharing life stories has on kids. It allows them to reflect on themselves, their actions, and most importantly, inspire greater empathy for all. From my experiences traveling throughout the Green Mountain State, talking about myself and related to the book Wonder, I came to the realization that perhaps there's more I can do, using my personal experience to impact a larger population. Therefore, at the end of that school year, I resigned from my position as a classroom teacher and started a nonprofit organization called Changing Perspectives. I am now the executive director of the organization and have 3 other employees. We provide schools with empathy education programs through curriculum materials and teacher training opportunities. Through this work, I am able to travel across the country and work with students from pre-K through college. The more I share my story and hear the stories of others, the more inspired I become of how awareness is truly the foundation to empathy. And from empathy, we can then all become greater advocates for ourselves and those around us. Thank you.